Go for it, Abby.
I'm here to talk about the 2019 National Narrow Gauge Convention. But first I thought I'd kind of let y'all know a little bit about me. You know that I'm married to Fred, Division 8 Superintendent. I was born and raised born and raised in Pikeville, Kentucky. My earliest memory of miniature trains was my brother's 4x8 sheet of plywood with a Lionel train going around it, and it was tucked under the bed when we didn't play with it, and we had Lincoln logs. So the scale was not exactly true, but that was fun. So fast forward to 2005, Fred took me to the National Train Show in Cincinnati. We didn't go to the convention, but we went to the show. I was totally amazed at what I saw. I had no idea. And I kept going around, and every time, I had no idea. I had no idea. I had no idea. The miniatures, everything in miniature just totally fascinated me. I'm a crafty person. I sew, I knit, I crochet. And I thought, well, that would be fun to make all these little buildings and make these trees and things when I found out that people actually made them. So about the same time, Fred was rekindling his interest in the hobby and joined the NMRA. So in 2010, our first activity was the 75th anniversary NMRA National Convention in Milwaukee. So, and we signed up with for a Modeling with the Masters session with Miles and Fran Hale. And during this session, we're building this little structure, and this gentleman comes up. I'm kind of on the back row, and Fred's beside me, and this gentleman comes up and starts chatting with me. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's nice. And Fred's like, that's Alan McClellan. And I'm like, the name didn't mean anything to me, but since then I have learned some of the bigger names in the hobby. And it was at that convention where I started seeing how some of the magic was created as far as all the building, how everything kind of went together. We would pore over the timetable to try to figure out what clinics we were going to attend and what we were going to do. And at one point we were, I think, probably out somewhere in the convention, and some modelers that we didn't know kind of were observing my enthusiasm, and one of them said, I wish you'd talk to my wife. So, and after that we started attending Division 8 meetings, and we became active members, and pretty soon he became the superintendent. So, and we talked about it and decided that model railroading would be a retirement activity that we could enjoy together. And this year we broke ground, or carpet as the case may be, on the layout that he's had in his head since the 70s. So scenery, weathering, and building structures will be some of my tasks. And since that convention in Milwaukee, we've attended several national and regional conventions, but most recently, thanks to the suggestion of Russ Weiss, we started going to the National Narrow Gauge Convention. So that's kind of the short story about how I became interested in model railroading. We did have, however, a few, I won't say ulterior motives, but other motives to get to go to California. So this kind of is a schedule, kind of what we did. September 2nd, we did some Fred-directed rail fanning and tourist railroads. Then the 3rd, we did some Fred-directed layout tours, which I'll explain more about that later. Then we did some pre-convention things. The convention had some things before the official start. And then we did the convention, put over 2,000 miles on the car, and I think, what did you say, Fred, over 4,000 pictures? And that doesn't include the ones I took. So, so we did, I told you, we did have other reasons to go to California, and one of them was our anniversary. We got married in Yosemite 15 years ago, so we usually try to go back to the scene of the crime. So there we were 15 years later. Huh. So look a little different, a little more gray hair.
The rock's the same.
Yeah, the rock. Yeah, the rock, and it's got the same sign on it. So
it still says warning.
Yeah. So, okay, that brings it, well, first of all, the National Narrow Gauge Convention is a little bit different than, if you've never been, they do clinics in the morning and in the evening, and your afternoons are free for layout tours, which is a pretty neat concept, I think. We really enjoyed it. We saw probably 30 layouts, and really, that's why I'm going to have to talk fast, because I've got so many pictures, and it was so hard to cut them out. They're just like, oh, I like this one, I like this one. So, and Fred briefly alluded to the fact that the 2022 combined convention is going to be Indy Junction 2022, And this is the format that they're planning to use as well. They're planning to do the layout tours in the middle of the day. So, and it's going to be a 4-day event. So Fred directed rail fanning and tourist railroads. Okay, the first one that we're going to talk about is Lee Jones Wildcat Railroad. And this was originally in an orchard. There's the little logo. A little bit more about that. And this is a picture of Fred. When his grandparents took him to this railroad when it was in Billy Jones' orchard so many years ago. And Fred was about 3 1/2 when that was taken. So we had to we were trying to duplicate the pose, but they told us that the caboose was not there anymore. So that's the best we could do, but still it was kind of fun. Now this railroad, it's an 18-inch gauge, and it is in Los Gatos City Park, and it joins a county park and a city park, and it was about a 10-minute ride, and it's on the southwest side of San Francisco Bay. They have that, okay, some more pictures here. That's Los Gatos, or he says I say it wrong, Los Gatos. And this locomotive was specially built. This railroad has 2 diesels and 2 steam. They run both of them, or all of them.
So this was special built a few years ago because they needed another reliable engine that they didn't have to steam up. Okay?
So it's live steam on the steam then?
Excuse me?
It's live steam on the steam?
Live steam, 18-inch gauge.
Is that electric or gas
No,
powered?
it is diesel.
Really?
It is diesel, and both the engines that look like diesel, they really are diesel engines.
Wow.
Okay, the next one is the Redwood Valley Railway. This is on the northeast side of San Francisco Bay in the Oakland Hills, and this one takes you through the redwoods. And it's an 18-inch gauge as well. And look at those trees. I just love that. It was a really fun ride. And he kept following me around taking pictures. I don't know, but mostly of the trains. So there's another one. And you know, you all do it. Every time you drive by somewhere, you're driving down the road and you see a train and it's like, put the brakes on, stop, and you have to go take a picture. So this is what happened here. We had to take a picture of these 2 locomotives. And here, we're modeling this area, so it's like you have to have some prototypical photographs as well. So I needed a picture of the Golden Hills so that we could see what that was all about.
Okay, truth be told, she has about 100 pictures of the Golden Hills.
Oh, come
You
on.
get one.
Okay.
Yeah, well, okay, so then the Fred directed layout tours. There was a situation, okay, has anybody heard of Jim Providenza? He's a modeler. He models the Santa Cruz Northern, and Fred, we met him in Kansas City at the National Convention, and Fred talked to him, and they kind of discussed the fact that Fred, the layout that is in his head, and soon to be in our basement, is the same area. And so Fred had connections in that area, and he said, well, if you're ever in town, you know, give me a call. So when the convention information came out, Fred was really disappointed that Jim's layout was not on the tour. So he called him and made arrangements to go see him himself. So, and he also offered us a tour of another layout that he's working with. So, which is Paul Weiss. He is a gentleman from Boston, well, the Boston area, I think.
Now, Russ, I want you to know they're from the wealthy side of the Weiss family because they could afford a second S, 2 S.
I noticed that right away.
Okay.
Son of a gun.
Well, his is a Boston and Maine Railroad, and it's in a warehouse that was once served by the Northwestern Pacific. And that's him in the middle there, and me. There's one of the aisles. It's still under construction, but it's going to be pretty big. He owns the warehouse, and they're deep into construction. Russ, this one's for you too.
Thank you, thank you.
And then I thought it was kind of interesting how this slope, the ramp slopes up to that level up there. And there's like a little peekaboo here between the levels. So then, we followed Jim in his 56 T-Bird. Then we went on to Jim Providenza's house. So we followed the T-Bird down the road and got there. And this is some of his backdrops, which I thought were gorgeous, just gorgeous. And I think he used the Fran and Miles cloud templates. But you know, it's really varied in such a way. And the mountains, he showed me, there's a picture of him in here showing me the technique there. And Fred said that this really reminded him of how the fog rolls in, or when he lived in that area, how the fog would just roll in. There he is, that's Jim Providenza, and he's showing me, that's the brush. He used some kind of fan brush to create those peaks on those, the tops of those hills. And
Really?
here's some of his other things. Now, this is another thing. Okay, Fred says that this cement plant is going to be in a basement near you soon. Well, maybe not soon. Maybe not soon.
So here's the deal. Jim's layout ends where our layout will end, but from different directions.
Oh, cool.
So,
Are you gonna start interchanging cars and stuff?
No.
no. So there's another
He's 10
view
years later.
and some more of the scenery here. And then, okay, the overshoe cement, is that some of, don't you have something like that on yours, Mark?
Corleone cement.
Oh, Corleone, okay, so, same concept, probably.
Same theory.
Yeah, there you go.
Sister division.
That's the California branch.
Sister
So-
division.
California family.
So like I said, don't blink because you might miss some of these pictures. But clinics and modules, the first one we're gonna talk about is Storm King. This is a module by Mark Allen. It's an ON30, and it's a freelance narrow gauge in the North Cascade of Washington in British Columbia. That's a tree stump, and I thought that was really pretty cool. The things that interested me in this one were the trees because they are so big. And that's what we're gonna need, some redwoods in our layout too.
So that's old
So-
skill, yeah.
So, yeah, so they are, well, you've not seen anything yet, just wait till we get to Colonel Roosevelt. But they're good looking trees, I think. There's Colonel Roosevelt. Colonel Roosevelt is 290 feet, scale feet in height, so it's like
People
six
standing on
So it's like
feet tall. So you should have seen him carrying it through from the display. And he also taught a clinic on making trees, or gave a clinic, so.
That's a stamp.
That's true.
Yeah, that is a real tree. So. very
It
cool.
just proves my point that if you did things to actual scale size on your layout,
Oh, yeah.
nobody would believe it.
But this was an interesting tree too, part of it. I think he was just demonstrating some of his modeling techniques there. Give an example of some of the branches. Okay, the next thing, the clinics. Okay, I didn't have any pictures of these people, but you recognize some of these clinicians. And we mostly attended clinics on weathering and scenery this particular convention. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes he'll go his way, I'll go my way, and we'll do clinics. But this is Bragdon. The biggest thing now is the geodesic foam, but he also is known for his weathering chalks. Scenic Express, Jim Elster did a clinic on static grass, and you see Martin Welberg. Martin Welberg actually, he's got his own website as well. His products are available at Scenic Express. Sam Swanson, Mid-Central Region Zone, also presented a clinic there. That was just one of his published articles that I found. Hunterline was there with their weathering products and clinics, good clinics. And then there's Martin Welberg. He was from the Netherlands. The most interesting kind of guy. Sat in a clinic, a 2-hour clinic on trees with him. I mean, these trees were, you couldn't believe them. It was crazy. And this is the clinic I actually sat with. This is a furnace filter trees, and that was the clinician who was teaching. And there I am sitting there in the class, and to the right you'll see that he gave us the tree trunks, which were made out of cedar shaped shingles that he had cut, and he had milled them with a bandsaw in some way. He actually showed us a video how he did it. And this was I think the trunk that I selected. I wanted one of the taller ones, but somebody got to it before I did. This was one of his sample trees, and this was another view of those tree trunks. I was going for that tall one, but didn't make it. And there's another sample tree, and there's our class forest. The people in the. Here's my little tree after Southwest. It got a little smashed. So I think there's hope for it. I think it'll be a decent looking tree when I do a little surgery on it.
Yeah, it looks good.
But yeah, it flew from California all the way here. So And there's me and my tree.
All right.
It did look better.
So, yeah.
Yeah, Christmas is coming, you need to make one about 6 foot tall.
Which that brings us to the layout tours. I'm gonna have to go pretty fast because I've got like way more pictures than I should have. So if you blink, you might miss some of them. But this is an O and ON3 layout. And it's a Rio Grande Matterhorn extension. It's set in 1959. And there's a separate level for the O-scale coal line. And the big thing about this is that they use real rocks.
Good.
Yes,
Oh,
they
wow.
do.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
In places. So there's a lot of real rocks in the scenes.
Talk about having a stopper.
So, some real big rocks.
Jeez,
So, and also some pretty nice scenery as well. Some nice backdrops.
Yeah, rock.
So,
If they're real rocks, nature made them,
Yeah.
does that count?
yeah.
Here we go.
And this one is Gordon and Marlene Briggs, and this is an O scale, and it's the Timber Creek Railroad, Southern Pacific. It's a branch line of the Southern Pacific in the 50s. And this one is a purpose-built building. He has built the building just for the railroad. So, and I had to take some of the trees out because I was taking pictures of trees, for example, so I'd know what to do. So a lot of the trees have been cut out, but I thought this was a pretty neat little scene with the hobos. And then the water.
And this is
Oh.
ON30?
This
Oh.
is
Oh.
Standard.
Yes.
Oh,
And then there's a couple of guys floating down the river in their little inner tubes. And there's some big SP steam going on there.
Goodness gracious.
And then there's the Grizzly Flats station.
Good eye.
Right, Rich been having.
So the next one's Jack Burgess. Anybody heard of Jack Burgess?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it was incredible. It's an HO layout, Yosemite Valley Railroad, and he models, that was his sign outside his house number. And I thought that was an interesting use of some railroad equipment or pieces on the front porch there, or back porch, whichever. This is a velocipede.
Yeah.
So, and there's more of those golden hills I needed to capture. And there he is showing me something about something about Merced, showing me with a prototype picture. And I like that palm tree. I thought that's just the coolest palm
It
tree.
was a cool palm tree.
And there's some more trees. Like I said, I've cut a lot of trees out. This is him showing me the interior of the roundhouse.
Goodness gracious.
And one of the neat things is that this layout is all hand-laid track and all scratch-built structures. And it is August, I don't know what day, but it's in 1939, a specific day. And if things weren't on the railroad that day, it's not on his layout. And I thought that was a pretty neat little building hanging off the side. And this is something that I hadn't seen. I'd never actually seen A-frame ladders, which I thought was really neat. So I took that pictures of the A-frame ladders. There's the El Portal. There's some figures there that kind of show that date. This is the entrance, the El Portal entrance to Yosemite National Park.
And Barbara, may I make a, you know, again, what fooled me, like with the first narrow gauge convention that I went to, is that the surrounding railroads, like this one, obviously, there's a lot of standard gauge guys that open up their layouts for this thing. So it's pretty neat to see some of these which we ordinarily would not get a chance to see.
Okay, so the next one is James and Deborah Diaz, which is just about a few minutes, 10 minutes from Jack Burgess. And I thought that was a pretty good looking wall there, retaining wall with the logs. And there's the KDY. I'm learning about what that is. So, and some lumber there. And some more good looking trees. And I like that one because it shows the dead tree. You know, not all of them are alive.
Yeah.
You gotta have a dead one every now and then.
Woodpecker's gotta eat too?
So, yeah. And I thought this was interesting too, for anybody who has duck unders, he's used actual rails there to help you get through the duck under. The next one is Berk and Jang Dongmin. This is an HON3, Shingleton and Hat Creek Railroad, and this is a freelance railroad in Colorado in the 50s. And there's some pictures here. That's a mine, that's actually animated. I just love that one. I think that is just, that little engine is so
And that's
cute.
just cutest little steam engine you've
Yeah.
ever seen.
I tell you, everybody ought to have one of those.
Yeah.
So
And
before Barbara goes to the next slide, you've seen all the detail. You've seen all the stuff in there, right?
Yeah.
Big layout, right?
Yeah. It's in a golf cart garage.
It's
And
a what?
a golf cart garage.
Well, they got those, huh?
So, yeah, you get, it's usually like a 2.5 car garage. We were in a subdivision that had, golf carts all over. And so he used his golf cart garage, and they actually do ops in there, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah, don't.
This one is Tom and Connie Ebert, it's HO, this is the Placerville branch, and it was inspired by a Southern Pacific branch line, and it's in, from Brighton to Placerville, California, and it's in Gold Country. And this one's gonna be published in Great Model Railroads in the upcoming edition. You can see there's multi-levels, and you've got the cows coming in to be milked, lined up there. And then, of course, if you got milk, you gotta do something with it, so it's at the platform waiting to be picked up by the train. And there's some more trees, good-looking trees in town. And this outhouse on wheels, and I guess he's waiting in line, waiting his turn, I don't know. Well, there you go, there you go.
Spoken like a true railroad.
Yeah, so. And then, you know, not all trees are perfect. This guy was bent over. So this, okay, so the next one is Philip Gully, and this is an HO layout, Union Pacific and Summit County, based on the UP's Park City branch, and it hauls coal, ore, and livestock. We're driving into this one, and it's, you know, not everything is like multi-lane highways in California. So we get there and the neighbors are goats.
Cool.
His neighbors are goats. And then it was another purpose-built building. And you go in there and this,
Colville.
yeah, another mine there. And at Long Isle, and I think this was an engineer. And you actually climb up steps to get to this level, and staging is underneath it. And this is only one side of it. It goes the other side of the building. I just had to cut a lot out. Okay, this one is Georgian Rosemary Hardy. It's an HO, and it's Spokane, Portland, and Seattle. California sub. I'm getting my time sign. Portland, Oregon to Wishrome, Washington, and it's under construction. So there's another long aisle there, and there's that photographer guy keeps following me around.
And go
Are
back.
you gonna have them arrested or?
Yeah, she took me into custody.
Okay, since I've gotten the sign, this is showing that this is like 4 levels. 4 levels. Okay, this one is Dave and Rosemary Houston. It's an HO and an SP Rockland sub, and it's in the coastal areas of Santa Barbara through Mount Shasta. And it features the Santa Fe, Southern Pacific, UP, and WP in 1957. And this has got some gorgeous backdrops.
Did the owner do those, or did he have a guy?
I asked him about that. I said, the backdrops are gorgeous. I said, did you paint them? And this is the one that said, it depends on how you spell paint.
Ah, that one, okay.
P-A-I-D. And here's where he painted, this is the Santa Barbara station. And
Seriously.
there's the prototype photo, or one. So, I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, and I thought this was interesting too, because not that I'm aware of, seen a thunderstorm, but I thought that was neat how he painted in the thunderstorm.
You even get the sound of it.
So, And there's the long aisle, the long,
That's the
Yard.
first Russ. That's one of the pictures I sent.
and then this Mount Shasta, Shasta City. Okay, the next one is Bill and Ryan Ewan. This is LN30, Red Rock and Green River, and it's a freelance railroad in New Mexico and Colorado. And this is pretty cool. That's how you get into it. And he was actually working that day, so he had to take a phone call. So he was out there on his phone. But I thought that was a pretty neat way to do your entrance. And he had some cute scenes in there. There's a bear on the railroad crossing sign. You've got the guys and the dog on the guy's shoulder. So this was kind of more fun.
Was he on the fishing pole or something?
Yeah, he's got.
Fish, but we better say
I think there's a fish dangling from it.
Yes, time to give up the fish.
And then this was one. This was Fred pointed it out that Russ's clinic last month said that you could just take your scene all the way up to the back, or up to the edge of the layout. So that was another example of that with the stock pin there. And I liked the horses. I had to take pictures of the horses. There's the owner back there. You can sort of see him, not on the phone this time. And this was, I think, fixing the roof. And then there's the cowboy out here, just one with the harmonica and just kind of laying back on the saddle.
And Barbara, again, this is ON30. Yeah.
You got to cut it somewhere, but I've got about 20 minutes worth of video of this guy's layout. None of it has a train running in it, because he's got all these little animations. There's one in there where he's got a guy painting the side of a house. He's got another one where they're doing this, they're doing that, and so forth. They've got a kid in an alley that couldn't quite make it to the outhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I had that on video too. This one is Gene and Bev Myers. It's an HON3, and it's Road River, Northern California and Oregon in the 1940s Mountain Railroad. And then you have I think the reflection in the water, where the bridge reflects, is just really awesome. So there it is again. And a lot of detail in there, and those fairly high cliffs. And this was, he had the roof off of a building, as a lot of y'all do, to show some of the details. So this one is Larry Mole, and this is two railroads. He's got an HON3 and an ON30. It's freelance. But he's got some pretty, there's that photographer guy again. He's everywhere. And because I'm from Eastern Kentucky, the male pouch tobacco sign on the roof just had to come along.
Yeah.
And then this is a little scene with the house and the flowers around the house, and then the little white picket fence. This is another mine. And I get ideas too about how people, if they want to put stuff, this is how they have their controls stored in a drawer that just pulls out. And then there's the repurposed box car for storage. Okay, so this is Tom and Darlene Peterman. This is an HON3, Denver and Rio Grande Western California division, and it's a freelance in 1939. This one is in a garage as well, and this one was originally designed to be lifted up, but when the guy got the scenery placed, he chickened out and decided he didn't want to take a chance on lifting it up, so instead he manufactured something to come down over it and cover it and protect it from the dust when he's not operating or using it. So yeah, there was a camper. I thought that was kind of neat. Well, I like this tree too. Obviously, it's another tree that I picked out. Okay, this one is Jeff Reynolds. This is an HON3, and this is another purpose-built building. And this one he operates 2 days, October 1st, 1940, and October 1st, 1950. So I guess at different times, whenever he feels like pulling out the 50 stuff or the 40 stuff. So lots of trees. And then there's an animal cow pen. this, it fascinated me how the lights were kind of following the aisles, so it's like, I had to take a picture of the lights. And this is, you can tell it's still under construction in various areas of it. This was a nice, showing the different, layers of color, and there's a trestle. Okay, this one's Scott and Heidi Robertson. This gentleman, taught a clinic that I went, that I participated in. And this is a G and an O in 30, and he calls it the never done and always changing. The upper layout is under construction, and it's a G-scale desert and mountain. And he says it's somewhere in the Southwest, sometime after World War II. But he's got some interesting detail, a lot of detail. And this, I thought this was interesting. The curtains actually blowing out the window.
Detail there.
And then you've got and the roof repair going on here with the tar paper and the metal pieces of the roof. The windmill, and there's horses back there. I had to cut one of the pictures of that horses, but lots of trees. Yeah. Repurposed. I think that's a passenger car and an outhouse. And a little mining town or logging town, looks like, with the logs. The bathhouse. People lined up to take a bath. And here's a water scene up to the edge. This was his little workshop. It was underneath the upper level. So I thought that was, making use of your space, whatever you have. Okay, this is a Model Railroad Club, Roseville Model Railroad Club. And they have something in common with K&I in that they were evicted. So we were probably some of the last people to see this railroad in place in the building that it is now. But, and then, of course, Eastern Kentucky had to get the mobile home in there.
Yep.
And then the grasshopper, the little oil rig. This was a very similar switching layout to the Pikeville layout. Fred talked to the guy a while about that, who built that. It's a similar design and pretty long. And there's the boxes you can see in the bottom where this is the end scale section where they're preparing to move.
What a shame.
Okay, Sacramento Model Railroad Historical Society. There's two railroads here, and they're HO and HON3. And what I liked about this was it shows you this. Can you see the retaining wall there, to hold up the rock wall? The
Rock slide wall?
Yeah, the rock slide wall. And then the rock slide wall alongside this tunnel portal. And the roundhouse. And the interesting thing about this is that they were modeling this. This is Sacramento shops. And you can actually, this was from the actual plans. You can see this is the boiler shop. This is Sacramento Locomotive Works. So these are, right now they're paper, but they're planned to complete at some point. So, the little hidden track back there, I took that picture because it's just like a little strip that then the track, the runaround track just goes right behind that little wall. Is that what you wanted to say about that?
Well, because I knew you did.
Oh, okay. And this is where they're rescuing a cat off the roof.
I've got a water pit there.
So, and this was just kind of give you an idea of how tall it was and how big the hills were in there.
So this is the HON3 site.
Yeah, and more good-looking trees. And then you can see this is what they build it with. Their foam is what they're used their construction.
So it's interesting. This is the HON3 side. The HO guys are not using foam.
Well, there you have it.
There you have it.
Okay, this last one
House
is
divided.
next. This is Walt and Carolyn Shedler. This was a surprise. This is an HO, Southern Pacific Shasta Division. This is Sacramento River Canyon from Gerber to Weed on the Siskiyou line and Grass Lake Summit on the Cascade. I couldn't remember all this stuff. They do ops on this layout, believe it or not. It's in an attic, and it's four levels of 3, I can't remember.
It depends upon where you
Yeah,
are.
it depends on where you're. So, and he said, look what he uses to create his rock wall paper. He just crumples up paper. And So there you can see some of the, I think that's about 3 or 4 of the levels.
Yep.
There's that guy again.
What's wrong with his back?
Yeah.
He's a track inspector.
This one, he asked me, he said, okay, how do you think I got the scenery material back in this little hollow? And I'm like, I don't know. And he blew it back there with a straw. So, hey, you know, you got to do what you got to do, right?
Hardcore.
And there's the roundhouse. This is Dennis. Do you look familiar, Russ? Yeah. This is a friend of Jim Petros who happened to come in while we were there and found out we were from Kentucky. He said, oh, do you know so-and-so? And he said, yeah, so found out that he knew Jim, he knows Russ. So there's, somebody actually got a picture of me, but you can see that there the multi-levels there. And then, surprise, surprise, the guy has a hobby shop in his garage. So we spent another hour shopping. But that was in Colusa, California. Okay, this one is Terry and Denise Schmidt. This is an HON3, Denver and Welch River. It's a freelance Denver and Rio Grande Western. And I like this, it's dark. He had all kinds of lights in there. So we had to take a picture of it in the dark. And I thought that's just the neatest thing, the way that car shows up there under that street light. And then here's his lit up. Oh, that's right, I forgot. Okay, now this one is built in a garage, but the guy has surrounded with it. You see the plastic in the back?
Yeah.
He's formed a room for the layout, bordered it with this plastic to kind of protect it and to keep it, you know, kind of separate from the garage. So, you know, you do it with what you have. Okay, Aaron and Amber Splon. This is an SM3 Nighthawk branch of the Copper River and Yukon Railroad. Does anybody recognize the name Brian Ellerby? He owned Evergreen Scale Models, but he passed away in 2010.
Oh, that's right.
And so apparently these people had obtained some of his Copper River and Yukon Railroad and are kind of restoring it, trying to bring it back to life.
All wood, no
Yeah.
styrene.
And I thought this was
You got
the truck AA towing service instead of AAA. And then there's of course an open top car so that you can see what's in it. Noel and Jane Wilson. This was an interesting one. There were 2 railroads. HO, which is a little trucking railroad, it was in a 10x40, and then there's a G scale outside, and it's Santa Fe and Butthead Cove Railroad. And there's a koi pond with a remote control tugboat. But this is the inside, the interior. This is the Kitty Pillar Company instead of as opposed to Caterpillar. And then some trees. And it's always Christmas. He's got Christmas lights all over. And there, that's him. That's the owner. And this is outside of the koi pond, or at that part of the railroad. There's the pond, and there's the bridge that actually is animated. So I made it.
You did.
So I made it. So that's kind of our summary.
Put some miles in the rail car, didn't you?
Barbara, all those pictures, I didn't see one open load.
Oh,
well.
Dude,
I do.
yeah, there was some,
Yeah, there was.
there was some log
There's some
loads
logs,
there.
yeah, I
Yeah.
can see it.
Hey, were you sleeping on that?
okay. So
That's a real fork.
thanks for listening. And like I said, we saw probably 30 layouts, clinics, and it was hard to choose the pictures. But just remember that the National Narrow Gauge Convention this coming 2020 is in St. Louis, so that's only a 4-hour drive.
Thanks, Barbara.
Okay. Thank you.